Hi lovely booktubers, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I am here in the book shack. It's a lovely afternoon. Um, I'm still full of cold, so if my voice is a bit croaky, I apologise. And if I slurp my drink from time to time, I also apologise. This is my Sunday weekly wrap-up on a Sunday for the first time in the last couple of weeks. I'm finishing up all the many reading events and challenges that I'm trying to get through in May. I've had quite a good week, actually. So I'm going to start off with middle grade May. I've already completed 6, 7, 8, 9 books of there were 17 prompts from 4 different co-hosts. I'll put all the information for all these various events in the description. I was planning to tick off all the prompts. I don't think I'm going to manage that, to be honest, but I have ticked off a few this week. Storm has... I particularly wanted to finish Storm's challenges. So her second challenge was something sparkling, either the cover or a character. I decided this silver on here would do. And I read Tom's Midnight Garden by Philippa Pierce, which I don't think I've read before. And this is about a young lad who's sent to live with his uncle and aunt during the summer holidays because his brother has contracted measles and it's highly contagious. No one wants him to get it. Now, because he's been in contact with his brother, they don't yet know whether he's got measles. So when he goes to stay with his uncle and aunt, he's not allowed out. So he's bored senseless. The aunt and uncle don't have children. They live in a flat that's in a converted big old Victorian building. And he's fascinated with a grandfather clock that's in the foyer, in the big hallway of this flat conversion. And he lies awake. You can hear it striking when he's in bed. And he lies awake, and it strikes 13. And so he gets up and goes to explore. And outside the back door, he finds this beautiful garden. And there are people in it. There are children playing in there, particularly a young girl. During the day, when he goes and looks out of the back door, there's only a broken old courtyard there with bike bits and things like that, the odd bin. But during the night, when the clock strikes 13, he finds this garden, and the young girl there, she can see him. They both think the other one is a ghost and get quite cross with each other. But he appears at different times of day, of the year, of different years. And it's a lovely book. It's a lovely book, and I'm glad I've read it. Another of the prompts was to continue a series, and this was one of Storm's prompts, but also Elizabeth from Lizzie Fay Books. And I chose this, By the Shores of Silver Lake, Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is the very middle of the series. This is book 4 of 7. And in this book, the Ingalls family moved from Plum Creek, where they have built a house and a farmstead, and Pa takes a job on the railways. He is working as a store man and paying the railway road workers. There's quite a lot of social history in this one because at one point, Pa takes Laura along the building of the railway track and explains to her exactly how it's happening. And I mean, this is the, what is it, 1840s? Um, it's quite interesting. I have the whole series. I do intend to read the rest of it at some point, but I haven't done yet. Excuse me. My final middle grade book, Lee from Dark Roots Creations, said a book about going home, starting over. I Am David by Anne Holm. Um, I This book was published in 1965, and I don't think I've read it in 50 years, 45, 50 years, I'm guessing. This book is the book that first got me interested in what how people could treat each other. It got me interested in the Second World War and the prisoner of war camps because although it's not horrifying, it's enlightening. Um, it's designed to be read by younger children. Um, yeah, I mean, there's the text. It's definitely middle grade. David is a child interned in a prisoner of war camp, and he presumes he must have had a mother and father, but he doesn't have any recollections other than of being in this refugee camp. He had a friend, um, a man who guided him and helped him. But then one day the commandant of the camp calls him in and tells him that he can escape. He says if he looks out of the window of the barrack building that they're sleeping in towards the commandant's office, when he sees him light a match overnight, the power will be turned off on the gates and fences for about 30 seconds. And he can shimmy over those as the guard changes, run to the woods, and there will be a package waiting for him that's got a bit of food in it, it's got a compass in it, and he needs to head for Denmark. And David doesn't quite believe the commandant, but he's got nothing better to do, so he thinks he might as well, and thinks it's a trap, but it isn't. The commandant is actually helping him escape. And it's a story about his journey across Europe. He gets a boat to Italy and travels up through Italy and through Switzerland to try and get to Denmark, although he has no idea why he's going there. He's just trusting his instinct. This is a beautiful, beautiful book, and I am really glad I read it again. Now, Historathon. I have been buddy reading this, The Word Hoard by Hannah Verdeen. I've been buddy reading it with John David. I loved it. I thought it was great fun. I mentioned a bit about it last week. It's, well, Daily Life in Old English is its subhead, and it uses Old English to show how words have changed, or not changed as the case may be, over time, but also to illustrate how life was lived in medieval times, early medieval times. I found it really interesting. It's one of those books, though, that there is so much in there because a lot of it, she goes over the words she's introduced in each chapter. So it's a bit like having looked through a foreign language book. You've got a glossary at the end of every chapter. and I don't have the memory skills to be able to remember all the words. But I loved this book, and there's some great words in there. Now, am I now on to... Let's go audiobook. So, I listened to I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. And I listened to this for horror mayhem. I've done a lot of horror mayhem reading this week. So, green pen at the ready. Turn you around slightly. To start with, let's start with these ones. Last week was classic horror. I was going to read Frankenstein, and then I decided I would rather read some Edgar Allan Poe. I have the complete works. I chose a few of his short stories, a couple of poems. I prefer the short stories to the poetry. I read The Fall of the House of Usher and The Pit and the Pendulum, Murders on the Rue Morgue, and Descent into the Maelstrom. I love Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and as far as I'm concerned, these are classics. So that is last week's prompt of classic horror ticked off. This week's prompt was modern horror, and also I have been reading adventure books for spring into adventure. I read this, The Terror by Dan Simmons. This was a group read with a lot of other people. This tells the story of the ill-fated Franklin expedition of 1845 to try and discover the Northwest Passage. It's a fictionalized version of it. So one of the things I think Dan Simmons has excelled at is the research for this book. It's incredible. But he has fictionalized it. He's added in a sort of... I mean, the story was horrific enough as it was. They got stranded in the ice for years. But Dan Simmons in this adds in a supernatural element. He adds in a large creature, a large mysterious creature on the ice that is hugely powerful and seems intent on eating as many people as he can. The atmosphere he manages to create in these pages is wonderful, and the tension that he builds up is brilliant too. I really, really enjoyed this book. It's 700 odd pages, but once you get started into it, you romp through it because it really is an exciting, rollicking read. So that ticks off my modern horror prompt. Now, let me get to the bingo card. I've read several short stories. I added this one to the classic reading for the week 3 prompt. This is Poussin Ling, and it's Wailing Ghosts. It is lots of macabre tales, it says. There's probably a dozen in here, and we've got ghosts, we've got deaths, we've got trolls, we have supernatural occurrences. They're really very good. They're very, very short. This is part of the Penguin Little Black Classics collection. Puson Ling was born in Zibo in China in 1640 and died in 1715. So I think that counts as classic. Um, then I'm doing a read along in July with a lovely group of people. We're reading some Hugh Walpole. So I decided to read one of his short stories, and I read a story called The Tarn. And this is about a guy who lives in the Lake District near Ullswater. He has a friend come to visit. He doesn't really like and has never really liked his friend. His friend is far more successful than he is, and he finds him extremely irritating. And at the beginning of the short story, he is envisaging when the friend is in different rooms in the house of how he's going to kill him. In the end, he takes him out for a walk, and they head to his favourite tarn. And a tarn is like a small lake in mountains. And I can't tell you any more than that because it completely ruined the story, and it's well worth reading. I've put that down as psychological horror. So I'm going to cross that off. And I've put it down as psychological horror because, again, it's quite atmospheric and it builds up the tension a bit. And you don't quite know what's going to happen. Now, I also read a large number of stuff online. So, I read this. Oh, that doesn't work at all. Most Haunted. It's by Matthew Clark, and the subhead is Exorcisms and Possessions. A scary journey in the most famous true stories of exorcisms and demonic possessions. So I read a couple of these. They were actually quite horrific. There was a German woman who was, I think, 23. Her family had had exorcisms performed on her 64 times in a year prior to her death. There was a number of really quite concerning stories in here, and concerning because they were true. But that's the possession box ticked off. I also read, I keep doing that on the wrong side. Oh. Witches by Mav Sky. 3 short stories. 3 Tales to Chill Your Bones, Volume 2. And needless to say, this is for the Witches box, which I am going to cross off. One of them that I particularly liked was about a witch that kept getting captured by villagers, nailed to the stake and burnt to ashes until the following morning when she was resurrected. And the next evening, the same thing would happen again. And the reason for that was because they thought she'd murdered someone, but she hadn't. And what she does about it, it's quite interesting. For a diverse order, I read a couple of stories by Eric LaRocca. And they were quite disturbing. In one of them, a husband wants... Well, he starts by saying to his spouse, that he wants them both to see other guys. And said spouse isn't overly impressed. It's quite surreal and quite bizarre. I don't read a lot of LGBTQ plus writing, and I think I would prefer it not to be horror. I'm not saying I didn't like it. It was a bit extreme. But anyway, there is my diverse author. Um, I also listened to Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. I'm going to put that down for Aliens. It's about a group of people who are stuck inside a computer called Anne. Anne isn't very nice. Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know whether I would have preferred to have read it, but it was on Audible for free, so I downloaded it and listened to it. Can you see where I'm going with this? Can you see how small this is? Home Invasion. I found In Our Home, a short story by Thomas Maxwell Harrison. Most of these I found on Kindle, by the way, Kindle Unlimited for free. This is about a family who go to stay in their cottage in Cheshire, and there is a husband and wife and two daughters, and a small dog, Poppy. The wife is a prosecuting barrister, and their home is invaded by someone who she has sent to jail for life for murder, who has escaped from prison. And packs a bit of a punch. It's quite fast paced. It's a very short novella. And yeah, I thought it was okay. So, Home Invasion. Now, the last book that I read was recommended by several people, but actually I saw it most recently on Aaron. Aaron read a book. Aaron read a book on his Friday wrap up, and it's called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, who is a Belgian author. And I don't know whether this counts as horror or not, to be honest, because this novel was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But there are definitely horror elements to it. So we start in an underground cell where 40 women of various ages are kept behind bars in one big cell. And 3 guards constantly patrol this cell. They can see all around it. The women, there's a toilet in there, and they have to use that in full view of everybody. They're given food a couple of times a day. They cook it themselves. They hand their cutlery back. They can't remember not being there. They do the same thing every day. And this, one of the group is much younger than the rest of them. And the others all think that she's probably there by mistake. She's a child. And over the course of some time, she realises, or rather she believes, that the passage of time, when the lights go up and the lights go down and when they are fed their meals, doesn't appear to be accurate or working on a 24-hour system. And so she starts to teach herself to count time by using her heartbeat. And she can become so good at this that she can tell what the passage of time is. Excuse me. Things go on like that for quite a while. And then one day, nobody appears to have any memories of how they got there. But one day, as they're about to receive their food delivery and the door is unlocked, loud sirens burst out and the guards all disappear. And they don't come back. And after a while, they go and investigate. And outside, there is this huge, wide, open space, and they can see nothing. They can't see the guards. And so these 40 women, well, 39 women and a young girl, go out into the big, wide world. They've got no idea where they are. They've got no idea if they're even on the right planet. And they explore, and they live their lives for years. For years. This book was absolutely incredible. I was gripped by it. I watched Aaron's video yesterday morning, and I was about to start the book, and I read it by lunchtime. It was just brilliant. I would recommend this to anyone. Now, the very fact that they were in this room and they didn't know each other, any of these people, they didn't know how they got there. I'm going to tick off the kidnapping box. And that means every single prompt and every single bingo box has been ticked off. Yay! And I've ticked them all off with separate things. So I've not used any story, novella, or novel twice. I'm pleased with that because it's only the 26th. But that leaves me time to finish the only two things I have left to finish this month, which is Lost Christianities for maybe Midrash that I am reading with Vin and Stephanie Cohen. And a vellum, which I'm reading for the Georgian readathon. So I'm going to do a couple more videos over the next couple of days. I'm not going to do them today because my throat is really tickly at the moment. And these will include what I'm planning to do for June. There's a lot of events coming up in June, July. There's summer long events. It's going to be very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to it. I need to do a Historiathon wrap up, and I need to do a Read Around the World wrap up. I also need to catch up with my book tags. So for now, I'm leaving it there. I shall speak to you again soon. Thank you for popping by. Please like and subscribe. And it's always lovely to see you. I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye for now.